name is Joshua Owens, and welcome to Schoolhouse Shock. On our first official episode, we have a very serious subject we are focusing on, one that I urge you all to take a second and pay attention to. According to a recent study entitled Hotspots of Terrorism and Other Crimes in the United States, Americans who are suspicious of centralized federal authority and are reverent of individual liberty are considered extreme right-wing terrorists. This study was produced by the National Consortium for the Study of Terrorism and Response to Terrorism at the University of Maryland, which was launched with $12 million in funding from the Department of Homeland Security. This study took its definitions from a 2011 study entitled Profiles of Perpetrators of Terrorism that used people opposed to abortion, people in favor of American sovereignty, and Americans who believed their way of life was under attack as terrorists. This report was prefaced by the 2009 MIAC report that framed libertarians, those who display bumper stickers in support of certain presidential candidates, people who own gold, or people who fly a U.S. flag outside of their home as potential terrorists. Now, these studies are extremely important and accurate in their depictions of terrorists, but we here at Schoolhouse Shock think that Homeland Security needs to take these definitions a bit further in light of recent terroristic threats. One incident that we think deserves a considerable amount of attention deals with a form of terrorism that is so advanced, so cutting edge, that most of you are probably completely unaware of it. It goes by the street name Bubble Gun Terrorism and should not be taken lightly. On January 10th, at a Pennsylvania elementary school, a 5-year-old was caught making obscene threats to another student. The 5-year-old allegedly said, "I'll shoot you, you shoot me, and we'll all play together." Now, even though the pink Hello Kitty bubble gun was not on the girl at the time, it's important to note that the classification of an event as terrorism depends as much on threats as the actual use of violence. Now, the school tried their best to handle the severity of this instance as appropriately as possible. The girl was interrogated for several hours without the parents present and was then issued a 10-day out-of-school suspension along with a medical and psychological evaluation. The therapist stated that he found no evidence or history of behavioral issues or poor parenting and determined that the child engaged in positive peer relationships. When asked about her own feelings in regard to the shooting conversation, the girl told the counselor that she didn't mean anything bad. In a move that we deem as deplorable, the school decided to reduce the suspension from 10 to 2 days. Now the girl has returned to school, and the family has 2 goals according to their lawyer. They want an apology as well as the suspension to be removed from her record so that she can transfer to another school. We suggest she transfer to another country. Now, another form of terrorism that has exploded throughout our younger generation goes by a name that we've coined as finger terrorism. This is quite possibly the most dangerous out of all the terrorist patterns. It is extremely difficult to spot a finger terrorist because we are all armed with their most apparent characteristic: hands. This therefore goes to show that it might be in the best interest of the citizens to go ahead and assume that we are all terrorists. Thank goodness we have had a bevy of responsible, fearful, and timid adults that have apprehended recent terrorists that are part of the Al-Qaeda organization. Earlier this month, a 6-year-old boy was suspended from his elementary school in Maryland for making a gun gesture with his hand and saying "pow." Days later, 2 6-year-olds were suspended in Maryland for pointing their fingers at each other while playing cops and robbers. A 5-year-old in Oklahoma and a 13-year-old in Pennsylvania were also suspended for the same lewd hand gestures. Also, just this week, a South Philadelphia elementary student was searched in front of classmates and threatened with arrest after she mistakenly brought a paper gun that looked similar to this to her school.
He would call me a murderer.
Now, some of you out there have stated that these teachers and principals missed a valuable teaching opportunity. That instead of overreacting and punishing these young children, that they could have sat them down and simply stated the importance of joking about shooting someone and the difference between playing cops and robbers and real-life violence. We say, absolutely not. These children are clearly a threat to national security, and they need to be treated as so. Forget teaching, forget influencing. Those are outdated and need to be replaced with something much more efficient, much more powerful, something that the Attorney General Eric Holder has been advocating for quite some time.
I've also asked the school board to make a part of every day some kind of anti-violence, anti-gun message. Every day, every school, at every level. One thing that I think is clear with young people and with adults as well is that we just have to be repetitive about this. It's not enough to simply have a catchy ad on a Monday and then only do it every Monday. We need to do this every day of the week and just really brainwash people into thinking about guns in a vastly different way.
The time to take control of this situation is not tomorrow. It's not next month when another bubble-toting terrorist clique or finger-waving gang has formed. The time to quell this mayhem is now. I urge you, if you see something, say something. If you hear something, fear something. If we don't get this under control now and realize how serious the issue truly is, then our future is one that no one here desires. It is one that every single American in this country will be affected by. A world full of people who not only think rationally and approach situations appropriately, but one where foamy, frothy bubble bandits have taken over our schools, filled our playgrounds, and dominated our future. Until next time, I'm Joshua Owens from SchoolhouseShock.com. A 6-year-old boy was suspended from his elementary school in Maryland for making a gun gesture with his hand and saying, "Pow." Days later, 2 6-year-olds were suspended in Maryland for pointing their fingers at each other while playing cops and robbers.